Well, guess what happened? The cod stocks collapsed, and 40,000 people lost their jobs overnight. So that's the most obvious example I can think of it affecting industry. But wherever you go, I mean, where the amount of food, fish, and invertebrates that we like to eat, and where there's declined, of course, it can't support as many people in the fishing industry. But the fishing industry is the obvious one. But I'd also say the diving industry. So people like to see marine life when they go diving. In many places in Southeast Asia, it's almost impossible to see a shark. It's impossible to see a fish bigger than that because there's been so much overfishing. So clearly, the diving people don't want to go diving in places where there's little left. And there are certainly examples of places where people used to go diving. There used to be a good diving industry, and it's just collapsed because people talk. Divers talk to each other, and they say, "Don't go there. Diving wasn't great. Go somewhere else instead where there's still a lot of fish left." So those are a couple of examples. But we use it far too casually. We use it, single-use plastic items with a plastic bag that are thrown away, or drinking water bottles that we just throw away afterwards. The plastic caps on our coffee. It's just endless. And I mean, clearly the plastics industry wants to keep selling plastic, and they want to sell more plastic so that they can please their shareholders. So there is, within industry, there is within the plastics industry, generally they want to sell more. This is the model for the world, for business. It's continual growth. So it's a combination. I think the industry is still pushing this and trying to find new ways that we can use plastic. It's people not really associating what they're doing in their daily life. If you use a plastic bottle and you put it in the rubbish bin, you think that's fine, right? But really, we shouldn't be using as much plastic in the first place. And sometimes the plastic gets lost. It falls off the back of the rubbish lorry or something like that. So, and government doesn't like to regulate business in a way of saying, no, you can't do that, no, you can't do that, unless it's a last resort. So there are a few countries like Bhutan has completely banned plastic bags. I think there's one or two other ones now. I think California is looking at phasing out single-use plastic bottles. So it takes quite a progressive government to say that this issue is so important that I'm going to prioritise it over everything else the government has to do. Providing clean water, making sure that people have food and jobs and things like that. So, unfortunately, it can take a long while. The situation will get really bad before governments actually react, and people push the government to react. Well, the ecosystems are habitats and species. So if you don't have the species by kind of definition, you don't have a proper ecosystem. And if you think about food webs, so kind of trophic pyramids, where you've got sharks, things like whales and dolphins at the very top of your pyramid, they're kind of apex predators, tunas and smaller predatory fish, and down to the bottom just single-celled plants. Essentially, what has happened is that primarily due to overfishing, humans tend to fish the large animals first. Not so much whales, although we used to hunt whales a long time ago. But not every culture hunts whales and dolphins. But certainly sharks and tunas and the large fish, they've been fished out. So essentially, what you have in places like Hong Kong is a lot of small-grown fish that reproduce very quickly, and you have jellyfish and things like that withstand heavy fishing pressure. And what it means is that the ecosystem, if you don't have your full trophic pyramid, what happens is that the ecosystem becomes much more unstable. So we can expect that as climate change starts to hit our oceans, the oceans that are healthy will withstand climate change much better than the ones where a lot of the species are already greatly reduced. And that's going to have impact for the food we eat. A lot of fish, squid, crabs, lobsters, shrimps and things like that would be affected. So undoubtedly, I suppose the biggest impact back to humans will be a reduced amount of food. I like it. I mean, I think so. I think they've rightly recognised that one of the best places to test it is marinas, because the unit is quite small. You can't use it to filter the open ocean. It's just never going to work like that. Where it's effective is where rubbish gathers. Often you find in marinas there's one particular corner of the marina where just because the wind blows in a certain direction, a lot of the rubbish ends up in that corner. So as a way of removing the rubbish constantly, I think it's great. I think in Hong Kong there are certain places in the natural coastline where rubbish gathers as well. Some of them are quite remote and hard to get to. So possibly we could have slightly bigger sea bins that are in some of these remote bays. Again, where because of the direction of the bay and the direction of the wind, a lot of rubbish gathers. So they're kind of passive. They just kind of wait there and the rubbish comes in. So I think really good, really interesting. I think they're a great way. They're so simple. That's one of the great things about them. So I think simple is generally good. You don't want something that's extremely complicated, extremely expensive. They're probably fairly reasonable. So in certain places, I think they can be really useful, but they're not going to be able to tackle the open ocean because they're not big enough. And often in the open ocean, the rubbish is actually quite spread out. You really need somewhere where it's collecting everything. But yeah, interesting. I'd like to see them deployed in Hong Kong.
One of my pet projects, I guess, is trying to inform people about packaging. So when you're going to the store and you're buying things for yourself, and there might be 2 or 3 products, some products might have more packaging than others. For example, the one that comes to mind is Garden here in Hong Kong, the company that makes the biscuits and the crackers. I remember 10 years ago, they had like these little plastic trays, and then like the biscuits or the bread would be inside the little plastic tray, and then had the cellophane bag over top of it. Well, I'd never seen that where I had lived before in Canada and the US. You just have the bag and the bread and the crackers are in there. And they stopped doing that. I've seen it. Now they just have the bag. They got rid of that little plastic tray. Sometimes I see it in certain goods, but not all the time. So I think consumers being aware when you're making a conscious choice of the purchases, you're thinking about not just I want this because I'm going to eat it and throw it over and then throw the packaging away, but they're starting now to think about what happens when they throw that packaging away. So that's a big one for me. There's a lot of things that we don't necessarily need to consume. They're just they're nice things to have. So it's just about, I think, being conscious, consuming what you need. There's a good commercial. It was I don't think it was ever on TV, but it was like an internet commercial. Actually, please only use what you need because supplies are limited. So I think if people start to consume less and consume more, if they're more conscientious in their choices of how it's made, what it's for, how it's packaged, how it can be disposed of, I think that'll have an impact. It's still not going to solve the problem.
I think it's a combination of things. So we need to reduce the amount of particularly plastic bags and bottles and straws and things like that. We need to reduce the amount that's produced in the first place, and try and reuse it. Let's not, plastic will last, at least 10 years. So why don't we reuse it? We just treat this amazing material far too cheaply. We need to be really careful that waste that is produced ends up in the right place. So if it's recyclable, it goes in the recycle bins. If it's not, it still goes in the bin. And we don't have this problem in Hong Kong, but in some countries in the world, their rubbish tips are right next to the sea. So you get a strong wind coming along, and it just, off flies all the rubbish into the sea. So we need to be much more clever about making sure that things like that don't happen. And then I think there is also a role that once the waste is in the sea, we need to get it out as quickly as possible, because over time, plastic doesn't disappear, it doesn't biodegrade, unless it's biodegradable plastic, it just breaks into smaller and smaller pieces. So the longer we leave it in the ocean, the smaller these pieces become, and small is not necessarily good, because we have all these filter feeding organisms that are then so small that they can actually take it in, and it's basically causing toxins in the food chain, which are going to come back and affect people like us who eat seafood. So we've got to get that, once the waste, particularly plastic, is in the sea, we've got to get it out as quickly as possible, and I think technology does have a role to play in helping us do that. I've seen other designs where you basically have like a very large scoop, and it's pulled by boats, and that way you can get plastic out of a much larger area. But of course it's expensive, and the sea is vast. So the combination of those things, I think, is basically what